What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. I'm here with my buddy Danny. What's up, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
Today we are talking about don't try. Thoughts on giving up. Now, this
Ooh.
is something when I said to Danny, I was like, let's do an episode on don't try. He said, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
but once I explained it, it made a little bit more sense. So this is
It did.
episode 45. And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We talk about a little bit of everything each week. We have a long episode, we have a short episode, but our goal is just to help each other and to help you guys out and just to chat, because sometimes sharing our experiences in life can help other people. So
Yeah, it's nice.
yeah. So
Yeah.
what I had to tell Danny about don't try so he could understand where I was coming from was kind of like Yoda's quote where he's like, do or do not, there is no try. And then also in The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, Mark Manson, he was talking about some dude who on his tombstone, it said, don't try. And I'm starting to see this more and more in my life, how trying is really just setting yourself up for failure. And
You know, oh, go ahead. Yeah. I was just gonna say it's interesting too, because like when it's early. So when you said just don't try, I was like, huh. And I was trying to figure out like what context, I guess, because it's my brain wasn't working correctly. But no, it's a really interesting point because like, it's like really pointing out the mental state or the attitude you're taking even before you do something, because we do that all the time, right? We have an attitude about the world or about what we're doing, and that really just colors how we see it. If you're in a bad mood, something's gonna the event's not going to be great, right? You're going to be miserable no matter what you do.
yeah, like I look at it and, when we say, oh, I'll try, it almost gives you an excuse to quit, because inevitably things aren't going to happen as quickly as you want them to happen. It's always going to happen that way.
Nope.
Like it takes way longer than you ever thought it would ever take. And so like saying I'll try just gives you an excuse to quit after a couple failed attempts and be like, see, I knew it wasn't going to work. But like
Yeah.
you look at it from the perspective of someone who's like really successful. Like I remember Will Smith was talking about how like he just decides to do something, and once he decides to do it, it's already done. It just takes you guys a while to see it. And like that's the difference between doing something and trying, because like it's that attitude that it's not over until I win. Like I'm going to do it until. And you hear this example all the time of the baby trying to walk, and it's like, when will a baby walk? It walks when it walks. Like it
Yeah.
just keeps on going until it gets there. And that's kind of a mindset that is really helpful in life, because once you get to that point where you can really figure out that almost anything is possible as long as you're willing to commit to it and keep on doing it until you get it. So like I think that's a really critical mindset to be successful in life. And when I say successful in life, I mean to have the life that you actually want.
Yeah, to get the things that you want and actually reach those goals, because everything does take time. Time sucks, man. It really does sometimes. Like, and I don't know why I always wonder why we're so bad at it, at like conceptualizing, like how long something's going to take and all. But like really, I think you're right though, because like if you go in with that mindset of trying to do something, it's not it's not that you have to complete it. There's no emphasis on actually finishing or actually making it happen. But if you know you're going to do it, it doesn't matter how long it takes. You'll just keep at it, keep going, and you'll make that thing happen. So I mean, why do you think so many people try things? I mean, I guess is one way to look at this issue.
Well, there is the other side of it, where we've talked about the explore exploit paradox, where
Yeah.
you need to explore a lot, and then once you find out what you actually like, you need to exploit it. And oftentimes people are just having issues because they haven't explored enough. Like you and I talk about how we're finally coming into our strides in life, and I think that's because we've both explored a lot, and now we can kind of see, what do I really like, what do I want to commit my time and effort to, and because of that we're able to do it. But maybe I think a lot of people may try because they're like, I don't know if I'll like it. And
Yeah, that's like, is there, I think that's like a difference though between like, you're trying to complete something or you're trying something out, right? Because there's like, I think when you're like the exploring idea is like, you want to do a bunch of different things, but you're doing them with the idea that they're not long term, right? Because the idea is to just do a lot of them to kind of like actually the point is really, you could say, gaining experience and skills, not necessarily the completion of it, whatever that looks like, right? So it's like you're doing it to see how you like it, whether you're good at it or what you can learn from it. So maybe there's a distinction there, I don't know, because like I think in the context, of like saying like I'm trying to get X done or whatever, that seems different because you have the accomplishment or a specific goal in mind with that task, rather than the goal of just, figuring out yourself or figuring out what you like in the world.
I think it's also somewhat of a victim mentality that people carry with them, because it's a lot easier to get sympathy when you're like, oh, I'm really trying hard and it's just not working. Like I'm trying at work and it's just not working. And it's like, are you really trying, or are you on Facebook, 6 out of 8 hours a day?
Yeah.
Are you really trying, or are you just showing up? And it gives people, it's like a loser's limp. Like they can say like, oh, I'm really trying, and everyone else, because they're being polite, they'll be like, oh yeah, you're putting in a lot of work, you're really trying. Whereas instead it's like, if you're trying and you're not getting what you want, maybe adjust a little bit, maybe change things you're doing, try a different method.
Yeah, find something that, it's like that idea of like, don't tell me, show me, right? Like if you're just going to say, if you keep saying I'm trying, are you really actually doing anything? And maybe you're doing it wrong. Maybe you should be doing something different if you really want to make it happen. And
Yeah.
I think that victim mentality is tough too, because a lot of people like being in that state. They like being in the state of, blaming it on something else beyond themselves, right? Finding the thing that they can say, oh, I'm trying, but it's just so difficult, or it's just, X, Y, and Z, and all these other things. And it's like, well, are you really focusing? Are you really doing what you need to actually accomplish it? Because I think we've talked about before, right? A lot of things, every choice involves a sacrifice in a sense, because you're choosing not to do other things at the same time. But if you choose correctly, you're choosing what you really want also. So it's like understanding that. And if you're indecisive, or if you're distracted, or if you're unsure, you're going to have all these competing things, and you might be trying at a lot of things, but you're never going to accomplish shit, because you're always kind of pulled every day into something new or something different, right? And it's really hard.
Yeah. Another point that I was thinking of when I thought of this topic, don't try, is actually like an instruction, like don't try. Because I can tell you from experience, the things that I've been really good at and really enjoy doing, I didn't have to try. Like there was no way I would not do it. And
Yeah.
once you get to the point where you can stack up enough of those things in your life, you literally don't try at all, because you spring out of bed in the morning and you're like, oh, I get to do this again. This is awesome.
Yeah, that's like finding what you really are good at, passionate about, like, right? What you're willing to do all the time and just enjoy doing, because you get, it's like people that say, who was I think it was I was listening to a writer talk on, they were being interviewed, and they said, they were talking about the writing, and they were like, talking about how much they just love to write, like just the process of writing itself, and that it never seemed like work. And like, because the person was like, because it took them a while to finish something, but they were like, yeah, but I love it, so I end up sitting with it longer maybe, but like, just enjoy doing what you do basically. And I think that's a really interesting place to be if you can get there, because it's, what you're doing is basically the life you want. You've kind of merged, your tasks, your projects with who you are in a very important way.
Yeah, getting there is something that I think all of us. Do you think that's kind of what Stoics and existentialists would say aspire to? Like aspire to get to that point where you're doing exactly what you would want to do, or do they say it's more of kind of like a principled, character driven life? Do you think?
I mean, I think the Stoics is definitely, having your principles realized through your action and through what you do, right? So that it's consistent in your beliefs and all. And I think they're looking for the flourishing life. It's very character driven, because it's all about, forming that right character. But
Did they
if
did
you
they
also,
also did they also kind of seek pleasure in the pursuit, or like realize that in the pursuit of that you would gain pleasure? Was that also a part of it?
yeah, I mean, eudaimonia is the good life, right? I mean, so it is like pursuing it to live the best life possible. And I think, but good in the sense of, also like morally good, right? And, being a good person. But I think that, yeah, there is pleasure in it because you're realizing your nature for as far as they see it, through this activity, through this sort of character development, you're realizing your nature. And so there is pleasure in it for sure. It's also difficult though. I mean, making right choices is not easy. We've talked about that.
But I like
And I
what you
think
say
the,
there
oh yeah,
with realizing your nature, because I think that is important. Like, as much as we all think we're alike, we're each, each of us has our own talents, things that we're better at or worse at, and that even our own preferences. But it's finding our nature, finding what we really excel at and enjoy doing, that allows us to have this perfect life, eudaimonia. And also, we don't have to try at that point, because those are the things that we would do even if we weren't getting paid for them. Those are the things that we could do even if, you know, we had to do one thing for the rest of our lives. Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. Their emphasis is more on like reason, right? But I think like the existentialists, with the idea of authenticity, you get this idea of like, especially with that notion, you get the idea of like the life that's right for you, right? Literally like who you are, becoming that person. And that's, it's a very high bar though, if you think about it, right? Because it's, the amount of, in both cases, I think, whether you're talking about character development for the Stoics or you're talking about, developing yourself in from an existential standpoint, which involves a lot of character development as well, it takes a deep self-knowledge to also be able to do that. And it takes a lot of self-awareness, I think, that is particularly probably hard now because of all the distractions and noise and stuff that's constantly out there. And also just, the way we've sort of maybe structured our society or whatever, that makes it difficult to kind of, people think it's more difficult, I think, to try things or to like explore in that sense, than they otherwise would, right? Because the way things are set up.
Mhm.
You see it all the time where it's like, it's funny. I think that idea of don't try is interesting too, because I was just thinking about this, like people that are do something like go to school or something, they get a job, they hate it, and then they hit a point, right, where it's like later in life. I mean, like you did. I mean, you literally went through this, right? So later in life, you're stuck at this point where you're like, oh shit, I don't want to do this. What do I do now? And for a lot of people, I think it seems so overwhelming to even bother. And I think this is the other thing of like, it seems so overwhelming that they don't even try. Or they say they're trying, but they say, oh, it's too difficult, right? Rather than looking for ways to make it happen. You know?
And the crazy part is that, like, it's something totally out of the realm of possibility for most people. Like, they ask what I
Oh
do,
yeah.
and I say, like, I used to be a veterinarian, but now I'm studying computers because I love computers. And they're like, why aren't you a vet anymore? And I'm like, I didn't like it. And they're like, yeah, but you were a veterinarian. And I'm like, yes, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing something that I really enjoy. And like, it's like they can't comprehend that I wouldn't want to do something, that I wouldn't want to do that. Cause that's like, you know,
It is funny, it's like when I mention it to people, I've like, if you come up and I'm mentioning that, it is funny because it is hard for people to comprehend because they think, well, they see all the things, they know all the stuff that you go through, right, to get it. I think that's it. It's like the idea that, oh, you went through all this school and you're not using it. But it's like, well, in a way you learned a lot, and like you are, in a sense, I guess you could say that it did something. I mean, you did do it for a while. It's not like you didn't ever practice. But if you really hate something, why would you keep doing it too, though? I mean, why wouldn't you do something different?
I heard about this thing the other day. I think it's like the zero sum something. But basically, like, it said, take a look at your life now. And is there anything you're doing in your life now that, given the chance, you wouldn't start doing over again? Like, for instance, working as a veterinarian, that was something for me. I was doing it because I had put all this work into doing it, and I had accumulated debt, and like, there was all this avalanche to get there. But I knew that if I was given the chance to choose again, I would not do it. And so, like, It said take a look at your life and figure out those things and then figure out how to stop doing them.
I like that. And it's funny too, because I think so many people, when they're in that situation, you feel they do it feels overwhelming and trapped, right? You feel like you're like, because I mean, look, you have to pay your bills, right? You have to survive and eat. And,
Well, it's that whole sunk
it,
cost
yeah,
fallacy or whatever it is, where
yeah.
people are like, "Oh, I mean, you went to 8 years of university, you paid $250,000,000," and it's like, yeah, well, that was a mistake then, and I'm not going to make it any better by continuing to do it. So might as
Well,
well just quit now.
yeah, but you made it essentially just a part of your life rather than a mistake in a way, right? You corrected it.
Oh
I
yeah.
think that's important, right? Because you went through it and you did what you wanted to make it different. You didn't just try. And I think that's the other thing, right? Because talking about, don't try, I think this is where a lot of people struggle, especially with like changing your life direction, because that is hard. And it is difficult. It seems overwhelming as hell. Because like a lot of times, you don't like, and I think I've talked to people before, where like they don't like what they're doing, but they can't conceive of doing something else because it just seems so insurmountable. And it's like, well, have you looked into it? Have you actually looked at like what you need, qualifications, what kind of like, because you could get another degree. If you already have a college degree, getting another one's not that hard, especially like, you're just basically getting another major, like looking at like the actual reality of it and then asking yourself, is it worth it? Do I want to do that? Because yeah, it'll be extra work, but if you really want to do it, you'll make it happen. And I think that's the principal idea, right? Is like, if you really want it, it should happen no matter how hard it is,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. So there's also another way that, as we've been talking, I thought of looking at don't try is kind of the benefits of laziness.
Hmm.
So like biologically, we're a lazy species because we need to do that in order to survive. Like we only expend energy when it's beneficial to us. And
Well, I remember reading, didn't like I think it was like hunter gatherers, they said like it's like they only it's a it's like 3 out of 7 days or something a week they work or something like it's like it's a very small portion of the week that they actually are like engaged in work in the sense of like survival activities, like
mhm,
collecting food, doing stuff like that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And so like you can almost look at it like that because I would say that while I am a very driven person, I'm also lazy in that I don't do unnecessary actions. Like, for instance, I'm very, very driven when it comes to achieving my goals, but I'm very, very lazy when it comes to looking at social media. I just don't do it. I don't care. Like the whole world could be doing it. And people are like, how come you don't know what's going on in the news? I don't care. It's not getting me to where I want to go. And so like I think don't try in that aspect is really important because you can benefit from targeted laziness.
I like that aspect of it too, because it's like, that those social pressures to do these things because everyone's doing it or because you'll fit in or whatever, like don't try and also conform to those things because that's always going to be that's always going to result in something bad or something negative. And it's funny too. I love when people say like, oh, you like this idea that you have to watch the news. And it's like, I don't need their opinion either anyway. It's like that's all you're getting is some asshole's opinion. I don't know why. And all they're trying to do is make you stressed. But
Mhm.
I think people that do it though also can't conceive of why you wouldn't because it's like
Don't you
they're
want to
in this
stay
panic state.
informed?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like you're not staying informed. Like, yeah, yeah.
It's not information. It maybe it was back when it was, 30 minutes twice a day. That was, information, but like now it's not. It's just too much. It's just insane. And it's like, but yeah, it's also too all the pressure from that to act that way, right? To be a certain way and the compulsion that it builds in people to try and fit in, right? To try and be this way, to try and present themselves a certain way. And that is definitely the type of trying. Yeah, I don't think you should try.
And oftentimes you're like trying to impress people you don't even like. Like that's the worst part of it is like keeping up with the Joneses, like trying to impress these people you don't like, trying to look more successful. Like I love that in America, like all these people rolling up in cars they can't they can barely afford, and like I, it's crazy.
On a 10-year fucking finance plan. Yeah, it's funny too. It's the uh like the existentialists, I think it's like when you talk about becoming like yourself or being authentic, I think a big part of that is not trying to be what other people want, not trying to be what, not really giving as much, you know, sort of value to what you think they perceive. Because honestly, like most people too, they're so caught up in their own shit, they're not paying attention to you. They don't notice. If you like, when was the last time you could remember, like, I don't know, what somebody else was wearing that you saw at work or something, or how it's like those sorts of things are so superficial. They don't really have anything to do with who you are. And I think that's the problem. Like, it's we can get caught up in this, like this external pleasing and stuff that we, you know, don't focus on ourselves, and we're trying the wrong things, maybe even. We're trying to please the wrong people.
And it's pretty crazy because like people try so hard to be someone else, and when you're trying to be someone else, you can only ever be second best because that other person is going to be the best person at it.
Yeah.
Whereas if instead you just let yourself be yourself, you can be the best at that because that's you.
It's funny. It's like, when you look at like these like ancient philosophers and stuff, they talked a lot about like, exemplary people, like, the moral, the person that displayed virtue that you could like, basically was a good model. But that's not the same thing, right? Because that's like looking for someone who has more experience, who's reached a higher level of healthy development, and either seeking them out to gain help, to sort of work on yourself, but not to become them. The goal is not to be that person, right? Because that is like impossible.
I heard this today, and it opened my eyes because we're always comparing ourselves, and like comparison is like the beginning of disappointment, definitely. But when we're comparing ourselves, it's almost always to people who have more or are better than we are. Very rarely do we compare ourselves to people who have less. you
Yeah.
know and it's like that perspective, because let's be real for a second. If you're living in America, you're doing better than probably 90% of the people on earth. Even if you're the poorest person in America, you're still doing better than most of the people on earth. And it's like the perspective where we think that we have to be this uber successful American, as opposed to seeing how, hey, what I have is still better than a lot of other people have, and I should probably be grateful for that.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like I think too, the engagement with media now makes it really hard to see that, because the emphasis is so much placed on that top tier, and whatever you're talking about, right? It's always the super top 0.001%. It's like, obviously not everybody can be that, but there's also, and we talked about this before, you might not want to be that, really. Like that might not even be a life that you would want, because again, you can't be the whole person. And that's sort of the problem I think people miss all the time too.
Not only that, but everything loses it loses its value. Like think about when you're really, really hungry, okay? And like if you love pizza, like I love pizza. If you're very, very hungry and
Yeah.
you love pizza, and somebody brings you like a fresh, delicious pizza from your favorite pizza place, that first bite is incredible. But then when
Yeah.
you're eating that eighth slice, it definitely has some diminishing returns. Like it's definitely not nearly as enjoyable as that first bite. And so, I mean, the people, these 0.003% people who have billions of dollars, they can't enjoy it. Like there literally is no value in anything. They could buy $100 million yacht and they're like, it's still, the toilet still gets clogged. They still have to pay people outrageous fees to fix it. Yeah.
There's actually, it's interesting. There's an example of this guy out, and I think it's called Dan Price. He has a Gravity Payments. So like it's a company. He's a CEO. He's the guy that raised all of his salaries to 70,000, and in order to do that, he cut his salary from 1 million to 70,000. And like he even said, he realized, like, he was like, yeah, having the money was nice, like being a millionaire or whatever was nice. He's like, but he's like, I realized it didn't make me any happier. Like actually, having the same salary as everybody else, being able to help all those people made him happier. And I think that's a great example of like also too, like what the Stoics are talking about too, with like eudaimonia of realizing what's really valuable, not these superficial values. And like he had that realization was that, oh yeah, I don't need all this money. And in fact, I get so much more value out of just being able to actually do good for my employees and help them and see my company thrive. And that's way more valuable because now I've helped a community, right? And it's like, it makes a huge difference. And I think there is like, that's our biggest problem though, I think, is that we try for the wrong values. We try, we don't have a clear idea of what really has value and what doesn't.
Hmm. I mean, first off, that example there is amazing because that's just like, how cool is that to work for a company where you know that there's not a single person who's struggling to get by? There's not
Oh,
a
dude.
single, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say, like when they made that change, like the percentage, like their employees were buying homes at like a rate of like tenfold or something. Like they were having more babies because they weren't, stressed. And it's interesting because he actually realized it when he found an employee had a McDonald's manager handbook like in their desk or something because they were working basically another job to survive, and that's absurd. That's like you have no time to yourself. But when you're getting paid like that, it's really
Yeah.
cool.
I remember I listened to Henry Ford's autobiography, and he prided himself in paying people the highest wage in the market. Like he was excited that he could pay people the highest possible wage because then he knew he would get the best possible employees and he could produce the best possible product. Whereas nowadays we're
Oh yeah.
stuck with all these gigantic dinosaur tyrants who just collect all the money for themselves.
Oh yeah, dude. When they made that change in his company, they tripled. The company literally tripled in how, I mean, it's like not they didn't need a ton of new employees right away, but like they literally their productivity tripled because people were happier. And I think that's one of the difficulties, in the world now is that a lot of people are, it's hard to find good jobs and stuff like that. So you're trying to, very hard to work that out. But it's understanding, I think, you know, what's valuable and realizing that, we get way more value when we can help others and have engagement with others and do the right thing than we really do from all these superficial things.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking about it, how we focus kind of on minimum wage. And because of that, all these companies have that as their target, minimum wage. Whereas if instead we did away with minimum wage and we made a maximum wage. So like the maximum that anyone could get paid is, I don't know, whatever it is. But then you would probably have companies competing to get closest to that maximum wage. Should be like, my company pays maximum wage.
Yeah, it's funny. It is. It probably would be the case. And I think, yeah, it's a shame that like, I think part of it too is people get stuck in these jobs and they don't try also to do other things, or they feel like they can't. Ooh, right.
Bring it back
And
to
that's
the
the problem.
episode. Bringing
Bring
it
it back
back
to
all the
topic.
way around.
Trying to make sense. Yeah, but no, seriously. And I think that, you get, and I get it. It's hard to, feel like oh, I got to do more now than I'm already doing just to get, to where I want to be. And that is hard.
Hmm. Yeah. So, what else? Anything else? Don't try. I mean, I've in my old age, I think I'm just coming like I think I'm just coming into my golden years right now. But like
Yeah, right.
uh I think that not trying is important. Like I feel like in my life I've kind of come full circle. Like back when I was young, I loved these fantasy books like Lord of the Rings and all these other things. I played with these little games. Like I was the prototypical nerd, and kids made so much fun of me at school. And because of that, I stopped being a nerd and I started working out and I started getting interested in cars and picking up girls and all this stuff that I thought the ultimate guy was supposed to be. And then turns out that like nerd culture is super popular, being fat is
Yep.
super popular. Like all this shit that I used to do, I was doing it before it was cool. All this shit is now popular. And
Wait,
it's kind of like, all that has just come full circle to be like, just do what you love to do. Like, don't
I
care.
think that's it, right? Don't try to if you live your life trying to be something for some other people or for the world, you're not living your life. That's the easiest way to say it, right? And I think that's, yeah. So I think don't try. In that context, don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just get it done.
Were you going to say anything else, or should we wrap it up?
Yeah, we can wrap it up because I forgot.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's it for today's episode. Don't try. We're not even trying to add more content to the end of this episode.
No.
That's it. Don't try. Thank you so much for joining us. Like, subscribe, share, join us on YouTube and also on all the podcasting things. I'm Randy. That's my buddy Danny. We'll catch you later. Peace, Danny.
Later, Randy.